Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife Podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. Welcome to episode 12 of Redefining Midlife. Before we get started on today's episode, I'd love to send a big thank you for a wonderful review left by a listener going by the name of Paleo Foxy. I love the name, by the way. The reviewer says, "I'm so happy to hear Jo explore a world that has, up until very recently, been shrouded in secrecy, sadness, and misconception, that of the midlife woman. I listened to Jo unveil her wisdom and what she has learned coming into this stage of life. It's not a time to have regrets. It's a time to seize all the new opportunities and change coming our way. Jo helps us see this as a positive, enriching, and empowering time of life and recreates the rules to fit our unique lives. A podcast of hope, compassion, education, and redefining a woman in midlife in 2022. I can't wait to hear more." I so appreciate that beautiful review, because leaving a rating helps, but the biggest boost for getting this podcast in front of more people comes when you leave a review on Apple. And as Paleo Foxy has shown, you can use a pseudonym. I'm assuming it's a pseudonym. I had a Spotify listener ask if they could leave a review on that platform. At this stage, Spotify only has a rating system, but leaving a 5-star review will definitely help the podcast reach more people. Now on to today's fabulous guest. Kerri Robertson is an amazing woman with an incredible story. We cover a lot in our conversation: how it was for Kerri going back to university to follow her passion when she had 3 young children, to reassessing what she really wanted in life after having a heart attack at 42. Now, at 51, we talk about how she's embarking on a social media adventure that could literally take her anywhere. Kerri embodies what it means to redefine her middle of life years. And in this episode, we also chat about the ups and downs of the menopause transition and becoming an empty nester, which Kerri has very recently discovered can change at the drop of a hat. She views and she embodies her belief that our middle years and beyond are the best years of our life, as you can pull out all the experiences from your earlier years and help others. Kerri is a self-described ambivert, feeling as though she personifies this term, loving nothing more than hanging out with her beloved Bernese Mountain Dog, Luna, or dancing with her friends on the dance floor. And one thing she's definitely learned is you're here for a good time, not a long time. During our chat, you'll also get to hear from Luna, who didn't want to miss out on being featured in this episode. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Welcome, Kerri, to Redefining Midlife Podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation because in our pre-chats, there's lots to talk about, and I want to learn more about you and your business that you're going into now as well, and your redirection that you're showing over the last few years. Now, you live in inner Melbourne and now work as a teacher. What led you to this career, and have you always been a teacher?
Oh, well, thank you firstly for having me, Jo, on your wonderful podcast. And yes, I think underneath I always did in fact want to be a teacher, but it took me quite a few years to get there. And I think that was primarily because it was really hard to get a teaching job back in the late 80s when I graduated from high school. And I think, as a child, I was always, teaching the neighbours' kids. They were coming over into the garage and I was using my blackboard easel. And I think I used to line up my dolls, Mum tells me, with the little golden books as their desks, on the carpet, and always teach them. So I always had it in me, if you like. But I didn't immediately pursue it after school. Instead, I went into financial planning. I just fell into that, to be honest. I think I had an interview at an agency back then, and you had to show them your typing skills and all that type of thing, and sort of fell into an admin role at a big company in the city and ended up working there for 15 years, but it never really did it for me. So I think it was my husband who, after 2 children, said to me, maybe you should finally go into teaching and do what you've really wanted to do. So I ended up, studying full-time as a mature age student. By then we had 3 children. Fraser, our youngest, was only 2. I used to drop him off at the creche at Deakin University, and off I went. And there you go. So I did my full years. We went down to 1 income, and it was tough, but probably, one of the most gratifying things that I've done for myself, I guess.
Wow. So rather than doing it part-time, you did full-time study with 3 young children.
I did, yeah. I'm a bit of an all or nothing person.
Yeah.
So, I kind of just, I just went for it. And I remember thinking, almost feeling a little bit guilty, like I'm being self-indulgent studying. I've got 3 kids that need my time, and I used to try and cram my timetable into 2.5 days a week instead of spreading it across the week like all those, those young students could do, with the luxury of knowing that they didn't always have other commitments. But my husband was very supportive, and I'd always be up late studying and doing assignments, and then getting up early to get the kids ready for school, and such a feeling of achievement at the end. I just loved that feeling of being at university and being Kerri, not being someone's wife or daughter. It was just a great feeling to be myself and to be able to learn again.
Hats off to you. That must have been a massive time in your life, or in your lives, and great that you've had that support from your husband to encourage you to do what you wanted to do, and then also to help pick up the pieces at home when you are under the pump in those busy times. So that would have been huge. And your youngest is probably still in nappies, not long out of nappies when you started, and then by the time you'd finished, a school-age child.
Yes, that's for sure. That's right. A lot happened in between. A lot happens in 4 years, as we know. So
yes. And
then hubby became a school principal the year that I graduated as a teacher. So we sort of were both having, a new sort of fresh start, if you like. So it was an interesting time.
So do you and your husband work in the same school, or is that something that?
No, gosh, no. I've got really good hearing, so I don't think I would enjoy walking into a staff room and that buzz that you often get in a staff room just kind of shuts off as the minute that I walk in. I wouldn't enjoy hearing everyone talking about him. So no, I just really enjoy being my own person. I work mainly at one school, and I love it. I just love being separate to where he is and being my own person.
That would be really hard, because I've taught in a number of rural schools where it has been husband and wife on the same staff, and I often wonder how that goes.
It's hard in rural schools because obviously your choices are more limited, and maybe you both want to work at the best school in the area, and there has to be room for both of you sometimes, but it's nice to be able to forge your own way independently, I think.
So you had a job in financial planning, you mentioned, before the teaching.
I did, yes.
And was that something that just you really didn't enjoy, or?
Look, I enjoyed the camaraderie. I loved my colleagues. I was organising pre-retirement seminars for people probably my age now, when I think about it, in their early 50s, staring down the barrel of getting their sort of finances in order and their super topped up. So, but it just felt as though I wasn't making that immediate difference that I wanted to make to people. So yeah, I didn't really connect with it. And I think 15 years was long enough. I sold health insurance during that time, part-time, to sort of fit in with the family as well. I had the whole scenario of traveling on the train all the way into the city, and expressing milk, sitting in a little meeting room and bringing that milk home in my little Tetra bag on the train, and trying to be the perfect mum, and being really skinny, I remember, because I was trying to be the perfect wife and mother, and I thought that I had to breastfeed, and all of those pressures at that time I still clearly remember as well. So yeah, that was just a very different stage in my life. But but teaching always beckoned, always beckoned.
And you're still enjoying the teaching now?
I am still enjoying it. I'm a casual relief teacher, so I feel as though no one really owns me, if you like. I quite enjoy that flexibility of maybe just grabbing a day for myself or being around for mum and dad if they need me, or the kids, if I need to. But in saying that, teaching has also changed, I feel, as well. It's a little bit more formulaic than it used to be, having to achieve certain goals, a lot more data based. So while it's still creative enough, I think I'll enjoy teaching, but I can still see maybe another career in me as well.
Oh, I'll look further to asking some questions about that other career that you've got the twinkle in your eye, so I can see it's something that'll be worth exploring. So you completed your university degree, you then went into teaching, and life would have found its own pattern and heartbeat. And then you had, at the age of 42, a major health scare. So
Yes.
I'd love to hear a little more about that time of your life and what that meant for you. And did that mean that you changed things because of that health scare?
Sure. So yes, that was a very pivotal part of my life, to be honest. Completely unexpected. So I was 42, so 9.5 years ago. It was I remember still vividly, very cold June, Queen's birthday weekend here in Melbourne, and I thought I'd take our boxer dog, to the dog park early one morning, and threw on the tracky dacks, threw on the gumboots, and started walking around the dog park with another lady who I didn't really know that well. We're just sort of chit-chatting, and then all of a sudden I just felt quite nauseous and had a little bit of a funny feeling in my left arm, and just broke into a cold sweat, and I just did not feel well. And I remember walking around and just talking to this lady, but not wanting to let on that I didn't feel great. And then I think she must have looked at me and said, "Kerri, you've gone pale. Are you okay?" And I just said, "I just need to sit down for a moment." So she sat me down on a park bench at the local dog park, and she said, "I'll just give you a couple of minutes. If not, I'll call an ambulance." And then I just got worse and worse, just feeling unwell. She rang the ambulance. I still remember the sound of the stretcher coming down the stones of the dog park to pick me up, and wondering who was going to take my dog home. That's all I was worried about. And going in the ambulance to the local hospital, and I still remember lying there, and my husband being called at his school and arriving, and them saying they measured the levels that they measure, and they said, "You've had a heart attack." Wow. And it was just completely unexpected. I wasn't overweight. I didn't have any family history. I had none of the conventional signs that you'd expect, or, apparently, from readings that I've done. So since then, women can often have more subtle symptoms, which I seem to have. And it turned out that I'd had what they call a false lumen, which was like a little flap that sort of built in one of my arteries, and it sort of stops the blood flowing properly to the heart. That's obviously why I felt so terrible that morning. And so I ended up in hospital for a week or so, and ended up going to cardiac rehab classes, and that little flap still needed to heal. That took a few weeks.
Right.
And they've put me on medication to keep the blood flowing, which I've been on, since then. So it was just a very big shock. And I remember saying to the doctor in the hospital, I'm 42, isn't that young to, have a heart attack? And he said, "Kerri, we have 25-year-olds who come in." So often the doctors are quite matter of fact about it. I was still in shock, wondering how it could even happen. But so that was a major turning point in my life, in that I remember my husband, we had a holiday booked already, and he just doubled the time we were going. He said, "We're here for a good time, not for a long time. Let's just go and enjoy ourselves."
Yes.
It really shakes things up and the way you view life, that's for sure.
Oh, it would. It would totally change your point of view. And if you're hearing some panting in the background, that's not Kerri. It's not her husband. Her beautiful, her beautiful
Not my
big dog,
medication
Luna.
network.
I wish everyone could see this. She is a monstrous dog.
Yeah.
How
Yes,
heavy would Luna be?
Luna
Just
the
so people
burner.
can. How large is Luna?
Luna the burner is 59 kilos, so she weighs more than my mother-in-law, and she is a big girl with a big bottom, and I'm sitting here in the study chatting to you, and she believes that she should be a big part of it. So
Well, I think she'll be a part of this. So if you're wondering what that noise was, that was Luna, and Luna's got no intention of going anywhere because she's getting the biggest pat from
yeah,
Kerri
she's
as
getting
we
a belly
speak.
rub as we speak.
Kerri, just thinking about that at that age, it wouldn't matter. Even now, something like that would be absolutely shocking to happen to
Yes.
women in their late 40s, 50s. But to happen
Yes.
at 42 with young children must have just been horrific.
Yes, it was. It was. I considered myself fit and healthy, and as I said, all the none of the risk factors that you would expect. So it was just one of those things that came out of left field, and it just really shook up my life. So
looking back now, was there anything that you start to think, that could have been something that wasn't quite
look,
right?
I remember the same old story. Women handling everything. I guess I remember feeling very tired that week. We were going into a long weekend, and I'd worked a lot and had been a little bit tired, but it was nothing that would have tipped me off.
Nothing unusual.
No, nothing unusual for a woman, that's for sure.
Has it changed what you do now and the way you think now? Is that sort of a big life event changed?
I think having a health scare definitely changes the way you look at things in your life. I think there's a lot of superfluous stuff that we worry about that we shouldn't. When you hear the conversations, almost leading into the silly season really now, aren't we? When you hear the conversations, that people have, about Christmas and Christmas Day and who's bringing what and this going on, and you think, why worry about all those silly things? But we all get caught up in that, of course. But I think just to cut out all the superfluous rubbish out of my life has been one major thing, definitely. And why let silly things stress you if you can help it? So that's probably been I think it was a reminder for all of that.
Yes.
More than anything.
And what about for your children? Is that something that having their mum go through something like that, is that something that they think of as well? Like they don't sweat the saying, sweat the small stuff?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I have two children, or we have two children who have both gone into healthcare. Maybe I'd like to think I was an inspiration. Maybe not.
Of course you would.
I've got an occupational therapist, and and a social worker, and the other one's still trying to find his path. So who knows? But I like to think, or I'd like to think that they have a strong sense of what's important in life if they're pursuing those types of careers as well.
Well, you certainly would have been paving the way for them and modelling those sort of processes as well, because it is so easy, isn't it, to get caught up in your own little world and your own little problems, and then suddenly faced with something as massive as what you as a family faced, and then just readjusting.
Definitely, Jo, definitely. The panting continues. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right. I think everyone can have a nice visual of a huge dog getting a big lover. Kerri, that's...
Oh, dear.
Your children are older now, so they've left home. And in a recent podcast episode, I was speaking to one of our guests, and she had just gone through the process and the emotions of what they call the term the empty nest. And so how did you go through that cycle? Because you're having 3 children at home to suddenly 0.
Yes, it's a very strange, almost eerie feeling, if you like. My husband and I, we were at that stage pre-COVID where we wanted to move into an apartment and have that whole lock up and leave lifestyle because we love to travel. And so we bought this apartment off the plan. And by the time it was built, we went and inspected it when it was ready. And I think we both got a shock at how small it was and how sort of a little bit sterile, if you like. And we both thought, we can't move into this yet. So we ended up selling our home, and we kind of kicked our 3 children out, to be honest. So we kind of created an artificial empty nesthood, which I probably feel even worse about.
So you really weren't worrying about the empty nest at all, were you?
I know, isn't that awful? So the
No.
3 kids all live in that apartment, the off-the-plan apartment, which they all love. It's nice and convenient. It's part of a shopping centre and all the rest of it near the railway. And my husband and I have moved into a bigger, older apartment in a city, Melbourne, which we've never lived in a city before. So we thought that was a bit of an adventure in itself. So Luna the burner, Mark and I are all in another apartment about probably half an hour away from the kids. And it's very quiet. There's no washing. I come home from work and there's no one saying what's for dinner. And that took some getting used to, especially when we kicked them out. So being an empty nester definitely is it's fraught with emotion as well, for sure.
It is, but there's that opportunity, isn't there? And you kind of touched on that when you're saying, you can choose whatever you want for dinner, and if you want to do something else, well, then you can do that. And there's that flexibility, which when you've given, it does take some time to get used to, because when you have spent so much time on everything is centered around everybody else, suddenly you've got that little bit of time then to think about what you might like to do. And that's, again, we'll touch on that shortly.
Yeah.
But a couple of weeks ago, the empty nest had to be filled with, because and Kerri and I were just talking prior to hitting the record button, that when you're a parent, you never stop parenting. There can always be something, and your life can turn around a complete different direction in a heartbeat. And you and your husband had this happen just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, I feel like all I'm talking about is medical things, and I promise you my life is pretty normal. But yes, so one morning a couple of weeks ago, I thought I'd get up and motivate myself. It was school holidays, which I love, the beginning of school holidays, when you just have all that time stretching out for yourself. And I thought I'll do a workout and I'll get into a good routine these holidays. So there I was doing my little workout, and the phone rang at about 6 a.m. and it was Andrew, our middle child, saying, Mum, you need to come straight away. Blair, that's our daughter, there's something wrong with her. So, and I said to him, do you need to call an ambulance? He said, no, just come quickly. So I hopped in the car and over I went, and I arrived to find Blair on the couch looking very unwell. And I said to her, what's wrong? And she just wouldn't answer me. And I said, squeeze my hand. She couldn't squeeze my hand. So we immediately rang an ambulance, and I was convinced she'd had a stroke. The ambulance came and she couldn't articulate anything. She couldn't speak properly. She had weakness in both her arms, and she was just looking at us like we were strangers, to be honest. So straight to emergency, and it turned out she had some sort of very strange neurological event. They ruled out stroke, thank goodness. They ruled out a seizure. They've called it, after 2 weeks in hospital, not being able to find the cause, some type of meningitis, they think. Just sort of backtracking, about a month ago, Blair and I had a mother-daughter trip to Singapore where we both got very ill, some sort of gastro illness, and they thought that there may have been some link to that, but they're not sure still. So she's come home to stay with Mark and I. So we've got one of the kids back, and she'll stay with us indefinitely while she recovers. But it was horrible. It was horrible, Jo, to see, And, ironically, Blair works at a hospital as an occupational therapist. She's been working on a stroke ward, and to see her just unable to speak properly, and, she's a very switched on young lady, it was frightening. So, even as an empty nester, you sometimes, as you say, your life can just sort of, take a weird turn. And one of our kids living with us once again at the moment. So
yes. Well, I'm certainly glad that she's on the mend and that she's got Mum to look over. over her. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure watching her every move and making sure she's going to get stronger and better. And
all I wanted was for her to come home to us, and those maternal instincts.
Oh yes.
Once again, I just wanted her to come home so I could look after her. So
as a parent, all you want in your children is to be. I know it sounds cheesy, but to be happy and to take away if they're feeling pain or feeling any sort of hurt. You just want that to disappear, don't you? That never changes. It's just the way you deal with it changes as they get older, because you can't solve their problems and they do have to go through hard times. But
that's right. Look, that'll be something, I hope in time that she draws upon. And, I even said to her, Blair, that will make you a better occupational therapist when you finally go back to work. You'll probably have more empathy, more insight, what it's like to be on the other side of that patient bed. So let's look at the positives for now.
And also as a young woman, Kerri, that's going to be a bit of a wake-up call for her as well. Like you got it at 42.
Yes.
And she's got that decades younger, hasn't she? And she'll have that different way of viewing.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of it that way, but no, you're right. You're right. That's very true. So that's hopefully her only wake-up call. But
I hope so too. And it will be. Something like that. Now, normally you have no children, but you've got your beautiful big dog, and you called her Berner, which is for people who can't, well, obviously you can't see. It's a breed that's probably one notch down from a Saint Bernard. Like she's huge. Right. And no doubt her presence is felt in your apartment. So, is having a pet made things less lonely when the children did leave? Is that something that you?
Oh, definitely. I don't know where we would have been without Luna. And obviously during the COVID stages too, she gives she brings structure to the day. Being in an apartment, I need to get up early and take her out and give her green spaces that she can explore, and it's great, fantastic for me to I love getting out amongst nature and just having a good walk and chat to people in the mornings. And then conversely, at the end of the day, I love rushing home out. All the parents probably at the school gates think, why is that teacher running out of school? I rush home. And my colleagues think that too sometimes. They see me bolt down the corridor. I don't say for being
that's
casual.
a great part of being a casual teacher. You can do that.
So I love having Luna. And, hubby and I take her for the big long walks on the weekends. And we talk to her like she's our baby, and we love her to pieces. So she's a big part of our life as empty nesters as well.
Well, she'd certainly create a lot of conversations. You wouldn't be short. People would be coming up to you because she's she's pretty amazing. Yes. And if you follow Kerri on Instagram, and we'll give you Kerri's Instagram handle later in the episode, you'll see photos of quite often of Luna and Kerri doing things together, which is gorgeous. So speaking about Instagram, a few years ago, you started an account on that platform. So
yes,
tell us a little bit more about that account and what made you go in this direction.
Yeah, I started it a couple of years ago just because I just like being creative, and I just wanted to, just use those little squares, I guess, as a marker for the way I lived my life, just incorporating my interests, which, I love fashion, affordable fashion, just putting together looks. I love dressing with colour. As a primary teacher, I love dressing in a way that I feel is bright and cheerful for the kids in my class. I love dogs, obviously. I love travel. And it was just a way to creatively capture all of those moments. I didn't really have an audience in mind at that stage, but I don't know what happened, but I just did a few try-ons of change room reels and things like that, and the followers just started coming. I'm not sure why. I think women just love to watch other women and see what they're up to, and they like to see people being creative, I guess, and it's just sort of built from there. It's just been very rapid for some reason. And then I had Bird's Nest, a clothing company, reach out and use me as a bit of a collaboration for some of their key pieces the last few months. So that's been a lot of fun, just putting together some reels and photos for them and just showcasing some of their wonderful Australian fashion. So I'd probably, I guess I'm on a bit of a roll now. I wouldn't mind doing a little bit more of that type of thing. It's funny how just one thing leads to another.
Yes.
And, I love being creative as a teacher as well in the classroom, dressing up and using props to engage kids. Yeah, and I think I just enjoy that part of using Instagram for the same purpose, bit of creative writing. Just, I guess it's an indulgence for me, but it's kind of caught on a little bit as well. So here's to you, Mrs. Robertson, a bit of play on words.
Yeah.
Everyone always sings the song to me, so I thought, why not? Yeah.
That's brilliant. And that's how I can't even remember how I stumbled. It must have been one of the, how sometimes posts appear on your feed. And I remember looking at that. Oh gosh, it would have been over 12 months ago now. I can't even think about how long it's been.
Yeah.
And I started following you because I thought, oh, isn't that fabulous? Because it, as somebody who's taking, I'm not sure how to word it, but you had a vision. You were able to see you were putting on clothes that you'd like to wear yourself and talking about that. And I just thought it was fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
And probably being an ex-teacher myself, I could appreciate where you're coming from as well. And just love the fact that you're doing something like this.
I just like to be creative. I think that's where it started. And then sometimes I think the same with anything, if you show or that you're enjoying something, other people tend to enjoy it too because you're so into it. So it's just grown from there, and who knows what the future holds. So I enjoy at this stage. Just I've got another collaboration that's in the works at the moment too, which is exciting. So someone else has contacted me. So
fantastic. Congratulations. That's really exciting. And I love seeing clothes on our age group as well, because you often see the advertisements and any glossy magazines, they're always from women who are in there, from young as 15 to mid-20s. You go, well, it looks great on that body, but my body's a little different now. Isn't
it fantastic that there's so much more of that now? I remember back in the day, Dolly magazine and Cosmo and all those, years, and used to have, I remember they talked about Cindy Crawford because she had, a mole on her face,
Oh, that's a scandal, isn't it?
Lauren Hutton, she had a gap in her teeth. That was,
that's as far as diversity went, wasn't it?
So it's fantastic now, isn't it, that women of all ages and shapes and sizes and whatever can just feel that they can showcase what they want to do.
And what do friends and family think of the change of direction that you've had?
Hubby is bemused. Hubby's bemused and happy.
Good.
But, he's happy if I'm happy. You know what they say.
He would be very proud. I don't know your husband. I've never seen your husband nor met your husband, but I imagine he'd be very proud of what you're doing.
Yes, I think he likes it. I think he likes it. So keeps me out of his school too. So no, he's happy. He's happy.
So you've got some dreams to make what you're doing now bigger, but you don't know what it's going to look like, or have you got sort of something in the back of your mind?
Not really. It's funny, deep in the recesses of your mind, you have these little dreams where, I don't know, maybe I could build a type of little business and maybe help a women's shelter or something like that in terms of styling women for interviews and things like that. I don't know, just I always have little beginnings of, I'm an ideas person, but I need to actually turn it into something.
So do that little manifesting pot, Kerri.
Something where you can help other women, like what you're doing, Jo, something where you can empower other women and, and it's the same as that's the part of teaching that I enjoy, inspiring kids and bringing out the best of kids. I'd like to maybe do something with women and through fashion somehow. I've sort of had thoughts of maybe doing something in collaboration with a women's shelter. Just using clothes to empower women, and so I have the beginning of an idea, but I don't know where I'm going with it yet. But
that's okay. You planted that seed, and that, who knows? The universe is a very strange way of making things happen, and for doors to open, and for you to meet people. So I'm really looking forward to it. I love that idea. Really love that idea.
Thank you.
Now, what is something you would love to do in the next 10 years or so?
Um,
Working on that or something completely different?
I think something along those lines, something to do with maybe fashion, something just for a different direction. I like something that has meaning, so I don't want to just work in a fashion store or something like that. I want to link it to something that has some meaning for other people, because that's why I went into teaching in the first place. So I want to take all the relationships and the connections that I have with teaching and apply that to just maybe something different for a change. So that may be fashion, I think.
So did you imagine this to happen now? So that's 10 years from when you had your, your big life change of
Yes.
having that health issue. Now at 52, this is what's happening and unfolding in front of your eyes. It's amazing what the next 10 years could look like, because you're not done and dusted. You've got decades ahead, and that's what's exciting. So
thank you, Jo. I'm glad I'm not done and dusted, and thank God I'm still here for a start. But that's very true. I never would have imagined that, I'd have this sort of thriving Instagram community and all of these things would be happening. So bring it on. Bring on the next 10 years.
Absolutely, bring it on. Oh, God, I can't wait to see it. I'm so glad that I've connected so I can see you at this stage and then go,
likewise.
Kerri. Yeah. She was on episode number.
Hopefully it's a fortuitous number that I'm on.
Yes. Oh, it will be. Don't you worry. So what's the biggest positive that you've found in this time of entering midlife? Because we can say midlife starts at 40 because, the age of what women could live to could be just over double that. But, that 40, 50 year, those decades, they're huge.
Yes.
And what's been positive?
I think just backing myself. I think women need to back themselves more and take control of their own lives more, rather than, my mum always says to me, we're always waiting around for men to, say yes or do this or do that. It's nice to sort of back ourselves and take charge a little bit more and make things happen. So I think post 50 or post 40, making your life happen more and having the confidence, the inner confidence to effect that change in your life. You don't have to be stuck in a rut forever or, be pigeonholed into what people think you were in your 20s or 30s. There's so much room for reinventing ourselves. So I think just backing yourself and reinventing yourself is entirely possible in your 50s.
That's the
and
truth.
Beyond.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is the truth. And that's what I've found, and any woman I'm having on my podcast are great examples of exactly that. And for other women to see that the sky's the limit. We are limiting ourselves a lot of the time because there is so many opportunities. It just takes a little bit of bravery to take a step in another direction.
Bravery, that's the word for sure, Jo. You've hit it in a nutshell. I agree.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're a great shining example of that. So you are a picture of health and wellness now. What are you doing to support your health and wellness on a daily basis at this point in time?
Exercise, I get up early. I carve out that time for myself. So I don't feel as though anyone's snatched my time away then. If I've, got it under my belt where I've devoted half an hour to myself first thing in the morning, then I can go off and enjoy my day and know that, I've put myself first. I think, especially at this time in my life, I know it's hard for women with young children to put themselves first, and maybe they have much shorter snatches of time. I don't know. I'm sure they do than I would. But I think just carving out that time early in the morning, whether it's meditation or for me it's exercise, just to know that I've invested in myself each day is important to me.
Yes. So that's sort of a life advice that you could give to any woman, really, isn't it?
Invest in yourself first. It's like the old adage of put your own things on the calendar and put yourself first before you start saying yes to everyone else type of
Well, you've got
of
energy then to give it to other people once you've given to yourself
right.
as well, don't you? Because often we're
Yeah.
so, you put everyone else first and you're depleted and you're not giving your best self to
No.
anybody.
No, that's true.
Mm.
Yes.
Well, I love that. So would that be the advice you would give to a 40+ woman? Or is there something else that you might?
No, I think back yourself and invest in yourself, which sounds like a really selfish message, but I think when you're saying it through the lens of a 50+ woman, you know intrinsically that it's not being selfish. It's a way of surviving and a way of thriving to do that.
That's right. After years of being selfless, it's important that we put ourselves first. And
Yes.
often it comes at a cost. For some women, it can be a wake-up call to go, it's time that I put myself first, or going through perimenopause and menopause, and suddenly you find that you're not dealing with things as well as you could have because you're in a depleted state. So that's
for sure, Jo, for sure.
Another reason. Kerri, if you could look into the future, what do you hope 80-year-old Kerri is going to say about current day Kerri?
She was a good mum. She was a good person who was kind. She was fun and lived her life to the fullest, especially after that life event that she had at 42. She wised up and she took control of her life then.
Well, I hope I can sit down with 80-year-old Kerri and have the same conversation and remind that 80-year-old Kerri what she said, because I think she'd be pretty happy.
Oh, thank you, Jo. I hope we're still chatting then too. I might have another big dog panting behind me by then.
So I did notice Luna started panting when we talked about 80-year-old Kerri.
She's a bit of an old woman.
How can people connect with you? You mentioned your Instagram handle, but if you can tell us that once again, and I'll pop it in the show notes as well.
It's Here's to You, Mrs. Robertson on Instagram. So I think it's here's _to _you _Mrs. Robertson.
Beautiful.
Not Mrs. Robinson, Mrs. Robertson.
Yes.
I have to tell my students. Yes. Yeah. Oh, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Beautiful. And I'd love for people to be able to see and meet you via that platform, because it really is it's a great thing that you're doing, and good luck with it. And we look forward to seeing how it all evolves over these next few months and years, because it will look completely different. If it's changed in such a short amount of time already, I can only imagine how it could change in the next short while.
Watch this space for sure.
Watch this space indeed.
Thank you so much for chatting to me.
Thank you for your time today, Kerri. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favourite podcast app to keep spreading these empowering messages. Please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. Join me again next week for another redefining midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.